Good afternoon, everybody. This is Hell's Unicorn once again. About a month and a half ago, I put a video up regarding the passing of famed American sniper Chris Kyle. Since that time, I have received a fair number of positive and slightly more negative private messages regarding that video. And furthermore, I've noticed that his memoirs and or autobiography, American Sniper, has been receiving a lot of love on Amazon. I had read Mr. Kyle's book about 3 or 4 months before he ended up passing away. My father had actually procured a copy of it because he was, and still largely is, a fairly big fan of America's present foreign policy, although I've been working on him and he is starting to see the light, particularly with regards to Rand Paul. I think I may be able to angle him towards supporting him in the primary in 2016 should he run. However, I thought it necessary to do a little bit more on this subject, primarily because all of these reviews that have been pouring in to Amazon.com of this book have been so vapid, so banal, so devoid of any actual intellectual curiosity that I felt the need to put in my 2 cents. I have the review posted on Amazon, and if any of you want to go over there and read it for yourselves and thumb it up or thumb it down, depending on how you like the content, be my guest. I would like to add a few caveats to this before I actually start reading it. Number one, I am not anti-military. This is something that's been thrown my way a lot in the more negative private messages that I've been getting. Quite the contrary. My greatest criticism of this country's foreign policy is that we have treated our military like disposable, hired hands rather than actual sons and daughters of this nation of ours. Our foreign policy sends them to places that they don't know, they don't understand, and in many cases will never even learn to pronounce properly, and they are told to kill. And when they come back, they are treated like discarded rubbish. They are not provided for by this government when it comes to their psychological and their health needs, and we need private organizations like Wounded Warrior Project in order to get them back up on their feet or to give them the necessary psychological care that they need to deal with the obvious emotional and psychological stress that comes from being a combat veteran. In keeping with this, I just want to state for the record that the criticisms found in this review are solely directed at Chris Kyle and do not necessarily reflect a broader opinion on others who have served and are serving in the armed forces. So with that, I will now start reading my review. This is titled American Sniper, an eye-opening view into the American soul. Chris Kyle has come to be a symbol of the post-9/11 culture that continues to pervade America's collective psyche. In his various interviews via the MSM in promotion of his autobiographical work, American Sniper, he comes off as keen to the point of arrogance, yet carries it quite well because he's consistently been on the winning team. His demeanor is that of a plain-spoken, unsubtle bruiser that exists somewhere between a Wild West cliché and a fanatical football fan who actually keeps himself in decent shape, in contrast to the armies of obese slobs who guzzle light beer and regurgitate NFL statistics. And he keeps himself in decent shape for those inevitable brawls with fans from the opposing team. But most important of all, he is as American as apple pie, wrapped in Old Glory and toting the party line regarding the nature of the world beyond the borders of our comfortable little castle. But whatever controversy or fame may follow this now deceased icon of American jingoism, the question that all should be concerned with is, can the man write a decent book? This question is answered with a resounding no. Contrary to all the gushing 2 to 3 sentence nondescriptive piles of rubbish pumping this book as some sort of captivating endeavor, American Sniper reads like a scatterbrained train wreck of incoherence. In fact, the sentence structure and paragraph format this little package comes in bears a strong resemblance to the eyesore 5-star reviews littering Amazon since Kyle's death. Though in this particular case there is enough of them that those who can suffer through the grating stops and starts will get a somewhat clear picture of the man's experiences. No, ladies and gentlemen, this is not a compelling read, even by the standards of the banal crap that Bill O'Reilly has been churning out of late. And I have in parentheses, I hear he's now writing a book called Killing Jesus, further underscoring the delusions of grandeur that many of my fellow Americans suffer from as they suffer a bumbling blowhard to put the Son of God in the same category as a drunken adulterer in John Kennedy and a corrupt railroad company crony turned genocidal lunatic in Abraham Lincoln. However, in spite of this being an extremely painful read in terms of quality, pacing, and structure, it does convey a needed lesson for those who are not predisposed to clicking their heels and their minds in obedient subordination when the words war on terror are uttered by a government official. Hence the reason why I have favored it with a higher rating than most of the other pseudo-nationalistic drivel that has cropped up in the past 10 years to continually excuse an overreaching interventionist foreign policy. It presents a man who is the quintessential antinomian fundamentalist, who fancies himself a Christian as he seeks to violate God's commandments at just about every turn, in direct contradiction to more than 2,000 years of established history from the gospel itself to the teachings of St. Augustine and Martin Luther. A man who brags about fights he's been in, Matthew 5:39, anyone? A man who treats the men and even a woman he killed in combat to such endearing terms as savages and barbarians, Mark chapters 5 through 7 perhaps, aka the Sermon on the Mount, and one who jokes about depriving non-combatant Iraqis of property without just compensation. Hello, Exodus chapter 20, verse 15, or thou shalt not steal. Granted, Mr. Kyle admits to not being a properly catechized man and also not terribly schooled in Scripture, which goes hand in hand with his conceit regarding how he thinks he will approach God with a clear conscience, something that no man with a proper understanding of the Christian faith would dare utter for fear of blaspheming. Let this by no means suggest that the author of this review is a pacifist or a hippie by any stretch of the imagination. I have no doubt in my mind that every single one of the 542 invading Russians that Simo Häyhä shot down were justified, because he was not the aggressor. The same cannot be said for Chris Kyle's disposition and his condescending attitude not only towards the insurgents he fought, but also the people that he regarded as innocent civilians, reveal a man that probably would have found favor in Stalin's eyes. Instead of an eloquent writer who offers insights into the nature of war, what is presented here is a veritable mouthpiece for American aggression in all regions of the Mideast, all of it bereft of any intellectual curiosity. Frequent descriptions of tactics and materials employed are offered up, but presented in a way that is both poorly worded, with lots of profanity as well, and synthesized into a monolithic narrative of, it's fun to kill the enemy, and I'm going to tell you about it again and again. There are some points of interest in the occasional insights provided by Chris Kyle's wife, Tara. Most of them relating to her daunting job of raising 2 kids largely by herself and dealing with a husband who seems less than capable of handling the calm of peace. Suffice to say, I have a newly found sense of pity for every woman married to men in active combat, as well as a sense of bewilderment over why a woman would subject herself to it knowingly. Ultimately, what is presented in Chris Kyle is a textbook trustee of what George Carlin referred to as the male disease, indulging in a highly concentrated assortment of booze, violence, and arrogance. While the nature of his recent passing has shocked and confused the unquestioning patriots of this generation, I can't help but put two and two together and speculate as to how a guy like this actually goes about helping a 25-year-old kid who has been to hell and come back with a nasty case of post-traumatic stress disorder. In parentheses, PTSD is a nice technical term for a man being eaten alive by his conscience. Even discounting the foolishness of giving a person in said situation a gun to blow off some steam at a shooting range. For those looking to go into the service and protect this country, I ask only that you do some hard thinking about where the borders of the United States of America actually rest and square it with a conflict far removed from its boundaries where the enemy has no access to an air force or a navy to speak of. And for those who are on the fence about what Chris Kyle represents, try visualizing him as a Russian soldier in the film Red Dawn, bragging about how many savages he bagged as they protected their homesteads out in the heartland. And then tell me what you would think of him. But by all means, read this book. It is quite instructive, though not for the reasons that most here seem to think. And that concludes the review. Feel free to post your opinions in the comments below or comment on the review at Amazon. The link is in the description. Until next time, with prudence to myself and benevolence to all of you, good evening.